Hello guys, it's Julia. Welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be the eyeshadow palette collection and a mini declutter. It's not a full declutter. I'm probably only getting rid of about 10 palettes or so, but I do have like 45 plus palettes to show you guys. The last time I did an eyeshadow palette collection and declutter was about 6 months ago here on my channel. So I'm planning to do this like half yearly, just every 6 months, kind of update you guys on what I have in my collection, just go through everything and hopefully give you guys mini reviews so you can kind of tell what's good, what are my favorites, and yeah. During the past 6 months, I've accumulated a lot of new things. I also constantly am editing down my collection, so whenever I get a new palette, I always try and make an effort to clear out the things I'm not really using in my collection, so I'm constantly decluttering off camera. I'd say over 75% of the palettes I'm mentioning in this video are ones that I have accumulated over the past 6 months. These are all new ones from the last video, so it's definitely going to have different content. I'm a huge eyeshadow lover. A lot of people who are watching my channel actually found me through my original eyeshadow palette videos, and a lot of the videos here on my channel are actually centered around eyeshadow. So fittingly, I do have a ton of eyeshadow palettes. They are my favorite item of makeup, and I just wanted to go through my collection. As always with my collection videos, I'm not intending to show off or brag. Everything in here I have worked very hard for, and these are just things that make me really happy that I like to spend my money on and treat myself to. So I hope you guys enjoy my eyeshadow palette collection and declutter. I have a feeling this is going to be a very long video, so get a snack, get some tea, get something, and just sit back and enjoy this one with me. As always, full details of my makeup look that I'm wearing in this video will be posted in the description box and on my Instagram. That's where I post all my makeup looks, so make sure you're following me over there at Julia C. Mazzucato. And without further ado, let's get right into it. I've organized everything by brand, so I'm just going to go through each brand, and I'm going to start off with Morphe. Let's start the video off with a bang with none other than my favorite palette in my collection. This is the Jaclyn Hill palette. I was actually going to hold off on making my collection video until I got my Jaclyn Hill Vault, which I am ordering next week on release date. But I don't know, something just came over me and I really wanted to film this today. So I am getting the Vault. I will be doing a full review on that one, but this is the original palette. I've said before that this is my favorite palette in my collection, and that still holds true for me today. I love this palette so much. Every single color in here is pretty much everything I could ever need to create basically whatever eye look I'd want to. You've got the neutrals in here, you've got the beautiful pops of color. It's just such a versatile palette, so this goes with me traveling. The formula is really great as well. You're definitely going to hear me say the words pigmented, blendable, whatever in this video multiple times, so get used to it, but it is very pigmented. It holds its pigment very well when it's blending, so it doesn't just like fluff away onto the eyes. You can really get a good amount of layering with different colors, which is what I really look for in a formula, just because I do very intricate eye looks and I want my colors to be able to stay pigmented when I blend on top of them, if that makes sense. The mattes are a really amazing formula. I think Jaclyn did an amazing job with this one, and I really like the new formula from Morphe. Not to say that the old formula was bad, I do still like that one, but this one is just so amazing. It's genuinely like a high-end formula for a really great price. I also really like the shimmers. They're very bold, they show up very foiled in the eyes, and they're very buttery and smooth. So this is probably one of the best palettes out there on the market. It's definitely my favorite in my collection. It's just a staple for me, and I definitely recommend it to pretty much anybody. So I also have the Morphe 39A palette. This one is a huge palette, definitely the biggest one in my collection. It's a bit difficult to store because of the size, but I do love it. This is definitely geared towards someone who does a lot of like artistry based stuff. You get 39 colors in here. Down the middle you get a basic row of warm brown transition shades, so that's very good for doing very versatile eye looks. And then I love that it's divided into 4 different color stories. So you have the brown, kind of warm chocolatey browns up here, you have the very warm toned berry shades, you have a cool blue color scheme over here, and then you have some gorgeous olive greens and some very deep kind of grungy shades. This palette is absolutely beautiful. It's got the same formula as the Jaclyn Hill palette, so it's very buttery, creamy, just so smooth and beautiful, and they're very extremely pigmented. Favorite shade in here is actually this gorgeous navy blue up here. I've never seen a shade be so rich in color. The same holds true for the formula. It's just such an amazing quality one for such a great price. I think this entire palette was $32. Unfortunately, this one was limited edition, so it's no longer available. You never really know with Morphe. Sometimes they do re-release some limited edition things, so they might bring this one back, or they might do like a volume 2, which I would totally pick up. Even though this was LE, I'm not getting rid of this one just because I use this very often. It's one of my favorites. And with all the eyeshadow palettes, I will try and flash some pictures of some looks I've done on screen just for some inspiration if you want that. Whenever I mention a palette on my channel, I always try to show some looks I've done with it, but this is one of my favorites, definitely a staple in my collection. The only original like 35 pan palette that I have from their original like pro line would be the Morphe 35O. They have a bunch of 35 pan palettes. The Jaclyn Hill one is kind of part of that line, kind of not. It's definitely a different style. But in the black original packaging, I only have one palette left from that. I did have quite a few of them, but I decluttered them all, and this is the only one I have left. I kept the 35O because this is so good if you are a working makeup artist. I love using this on clients whenever I do freelance work. I'm not like a professional makeup artist by any means, but I do makeup on other people, and this is one of my favorites for doing that because you've got basically every warm brown neutral you would ever need to do a neutral look. It's great for working on many different skin tones, and then the formula in here is actually very, very good as well. It's a $23 palette, I want to say, and you're getting 35 shades, but the formula is so high quality, probably one of the best formulas you could get for the price. The mattes are a little bit drier than the ones in the Jaclyn Hill palette, but still very pigmented and blendable. And then the shimmers are so out of this world. My favorite one would be the shade here. I did name this one Pumpkin. I actually named all the shades in here. One of my pet peeves is when a palette comes and it doesn't have shade names. I just feel like shade names really help me to connect with a shadow and remember that shadow whenever I'm looking for a specific color. So I did take the liberty of naming each shade. This one I did name Pumpkin. I think it's a very appropriate name because it's like a pumpkin spice foiled glittery shimmer shade. It's beautiful. So I love using this on other people and myself, and this is going to stay. It's a great palette for fall. Finally, I have the Morphe 25B palette. This one is a bit of a smaller palette. I love the compact size. This one does have 25 shades instead of 35, and I think it was $18. 25A and 25B palettes are basically just neutral palettes. The only difference is that 25A is warm. This one's a bit more on the cool side. So you basically get all these cool brown shades and then two like gorgeous burgundy shades up here that I use very often on myself. But this, I would say, if you are a working artist, is a great complement to the 35O palette because you get all the cool toned neutrals instead. I also really like these three cool toned browns here for using as contours, either as on my nose or on my cheekbones. This is a really great staple product. I don't use it quite as much as the 35O just because I normally go for warm tones more often, but it is still really great quality. I think it's actually a little bit different from the regular Morphe formula. Not quite as good as the Jaclyn Hill one, but right in between 35O and Jaclyn Hill. Both of which are great quality, but I think this one is right in the middle of those. So I do really enjoy this one, and I'm keeping this. I figure now is as good a time as any to get into my Colourpop palettes. So I think I'll just go in order of how they were released. So the first one I have would be the Yes Please palette, which says Cute AF on the front, but it is called Yes Please on the back. This one, prepare yourself for the insides, but I actually did tear out the component and then made it into like a single shadow pan just because the packaging was really annoying me and I didn't like how dirty it got. So I took out the like internal component. Underneath that there is a magnetic board basically where the shadows stick on because they are magnetic pans. So now I just have an empty magnetic palette still in the original packaging but full of my Yes Please shades. This is a really great palette for summer. I love having beautiful like fiery warm tone neutrals and it's kind of a bit of a brighter take on that. I really like having this yellow in here, this beautiful coral shade, and one of my favorite shades in my collection would have to be this kind of orange shimmer shade here. I don't have anything like that in my collection, so I really enjoy this palette a lot. Colourpop's formula is very great in their palettes. I think they're very consistent with the normal quality of their single shadows and what's in the palettes. It's a little bit powdery, but they're still very pigmented and they blend very easily, so just overall, great palettes for $16. I'm keeping this one. The second palette they released was the Fem Rosa palette with Karrueche, and I think they really listened to their customers when they came out with this beautiful packaging because the Yes Please palette was a little bit underwhelming in terms of the packaging quality, and this one's just gorgeous. So I love the palette design, first of all. It's just a very like purple toned and pink toned. It's just a very warm, pink, romantic toned palette. I love all the gorgeous shades in here. You're only getting 4 mattes in here, so it can be a little bit more difficult if you do predominantly matte looks like I do, but I still really like this one. I've created some very nice romantic, kind of soft glam looks with this one, and again, the formula is great. So I'm keeping this one as well, not just for the packaging, although I would totally just keep it for the packaging, but the formula is great and I love the colors. The next one they came out with was the My Little Pony palette. This one is a very underrated palette in my opinion because a lot of people just like wrote this one off, used it once, never talked about it again, but I consistently reach for this one and I really do like it. It's one of my favorite, more colorful palettes in my collection. The thing I love about this palette is that it's kind of a twist on the regular colorful palette. Most people come out with like very rainbow tone, bright, fluorescent, almost neon colors, and this one's more muted. It's a little bit more retro, so they have some really cool like pastel shades in here. I really, really love the 3 blues down here. They're absolutely gorgeous, but this is one of my favorites in my collection. It's a very unique color scheme, and the packaging is very nostalgic as well. I never watched My Little Pony. I didn't really watch cartoons that much when I was little, besides like Charlie and Lola and Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. This is one of my favorites, probably my top 2 Colourpop palettes in general, and I really enjoy this. This next one I'm actually going to get rid of. This is the Colourpop All I See Is Magic palette from Holiday 2017. So I just haven't been using this palette at all. There were only 2 shades in here that were really holding me back from just getting rid of this one for my collection. There's a beautiful burgundy shade called Tinseltown, and then a very nice shimmery kind of almost burgundy plumish shade I believe that was called Pitter Patter. Because these Colourpop palettes are magnetic, I actually popped out those pans. I stuck them into the Fem Rosa palette, so these two shades are the ones I want to keep from the All I See Is Magic, and then I took the ones from here, put them into here, and now I have a palette full of shades I don't really need. In my opinion, this kind of looks very similar to the Master Palette by Mario. You've got like warm tone neutrals and a really nice pop of green here. It's a really beautiful palette, but I have colors like this one, so I will be passing on this palette. This one was, I think, $20, and the packaging is really cute. It was limited edition, so I'm getting rid of this one. I forgot to mention what I'm doing with the palettes. I declutter. The ones that I've used quite a bit, I will be passing on to friends who want them. The ones that have been used very, very gently will be sold on my Poshmark. So this one I will list on my Poshmark, along with this Colourpop Take Me Home palette. I will be getting rid of this one as well. I got this for Christmas this year, and I used it, I think, like one time. I love that there's warm tone neutrals in here, and it's a very compact palette to travel with, but now that I have the Anastasia Soft Glam palette, I just don't need this one. It's a very similar kind of vibe and color scheme, so I'm going to be getting rid of these two Colourpop palettes. These ones will be on my Poshmark. I also have the Colourpop Dream Street palette. This one was from Kathleen Light's collection, and this is one of my favorites as well. I love the packaging, first of all. It's like a rose gold kind of marble packaging, and then the color scheme in here is really, really pretty. Again, it's kind of like a warm tone neutral palette with some two beautiful pops of blue. These are amazing quality shadows. They're one of the best formulas I've tried from Colourpop. I think they were actually a little bit better with this quality than the other palettes. Not to say those are bad, but this one's just out of this world. I would actually pay like $30 for this palette. The only thing I don't like is that these two copper shades up here, they look very similar on the eyes, but that doesn't really bother me. This was a $16 palette, and it's just such good quality. I use this one very often, so keeping this one as well. Next, I want to talk about my Pat McGrath shadows. So I have two palettes from them. The first one would be the Pat McGrath Mothership Subversive. It's the Mothership Mini palette, and this is in the shade La Vie en Rose, which is Life in Pink in French. Pat McGrath obviously is a very expensive brand. This palette was $55 for 6 shades, which is stupidly expensive. But as I commonly say with her products, you're kind of paying for the experience of the packaging as well as the quality of the product. So I really love that she puts a lot of effort and just high quality stuff into her packaging. You've got this artistic, beautiful box in here. You open it up, you get a very big mirror in here as well, so it's nice for travel and it's very sturdy. And then here are the colors. So my main concern with this palette when I tried it out was, are the formulas in here the same as the ones in the big Pat McGrath palettes? And I'm very happy to say that it is that same great formula. The mattes in here are so beautiful. It's probably one of my favorite formulas in the entire world, but they blend so well. They just diffuse very easily onto the eyes. You do get quite a few shimmers in here. You don't get any of the Pat McGrath metallic foil pigments, which are my favorite formula from her, but you do get the standard shimmers. They're beautiful colors and they're so versatile on the eye. I really enjoy this palette a lot, from the packaging to the actual color scheme to the quality of the shadows. This is just an amazing palette. So if you're wanting to try out some of Pat McGrath's shadows, the Mothership Minis are a great way to go. So this is my Mothership number 2 in Sublime. I love this color scheme, first of all. You basically get every single Pat McGrath formula in here. These two matte shades up here are that smooth, easily blendable, buttery formula that Pat McGrath does for her mattes. The shimmers are really nice as well, kind of standard, but really pretty. And then the four metallic pigments down here are kind of the star of the show. They are water activated, so you do have to use them wet if you want that full, beautiful effect. But if you get them just a tiny bit wet, they literally turn into like liquid metal. It's stunning. So I did use this palette in a Get Ready With Me that's coming up very soon on my channel, but this palette is beyond gorgeous. Probably one of my favorite luxury items in my collection, and just a beautiful palette. That Pat McGrath palette is actually the perfect segue into my Anastasia palettes, because I do have kind of a dupe for that palette. Here I have my Anastasia Beverly Hills Prism palette, and this one I actually consider to be sort of a dupe for the Pat McGrath one. The key shades in the Pat McGrath palette that I really love are duped in this one. Throne, which is that beautiful green black duochrome shimmer shade. You have Pyramid, which is just a pure gold pigmented shimmer shade. It's gorgeous on the eyes. And you have Obsidian and Parallel, obviously, which are just black and brown mattes. Very versatile and easy to create some very nice smoky looks with. So, I mean, it's not a full dupe. You don't get every single shade from the Pat McGrath one in here, but you do get most of the key shades, and I think it's a really gorgeous, comparable dupe. It's not inexpensive by any means. This is $42, I believe, whereas the Pat McGrath one is $125, but still, gorgeous palette. I really like this one a lot. It's a very unique color scheme. Norvina was able to kind of put in some really fun duochrome shades, some really foiled shimmer shades, as well as some really funky mattes like this shade Sphere, which is like a highlighter yellow. It's not a palette that you look at and you're like immediately sure of what look you're gonna do. I like that it kind of pushes me to be more creative and create new looks. So I really do like this palette a lot. This one is going to stay. You'll find that I do collect Anastasia palettes. I buy pretty much every new release they have. They could probably release dirt and I would still buy it because I just love their brand. And they're very artistry based. Love their aesthetic. They kind of surround themselves with an Instagram community of people who are very creative and do innovative artistic designs with their makeup. They're very much just a brand that I'm drawn to for that reason. I have the good old classic Modern Renaissance palette. This one is a staple in my collection and probably one of the best palettes ever created. This color scheme is very innovative when it came out. No one was really doing warm tone palettes with berry shades in there. It really changed the game with this palette. Now you see so many color schemes like this one, but this is the OG. One of the reasons I love this so much is that you have so many things you can do with it because you do have the warm tone neutrals in here. You have some beautiful soft shimmer shades. You have the red tone berries, you have the oranges, and you actually have some cool tones in here as well. So there's so many different ways you could take this palette. There's so many different looks you can create. And this is actually a palette that I reach for when I don't know what I want to do with my eyeshadow. It's a very effortless palette to work with and it just always comes out great. Obviously I've hit pan on the shade here called Golden Ochre. This is just such a special palette to me because my grandma did buy it for me. So once I do finish up all the shadows in here, which I'm sure I will do eventually, I will probably repurchase it, but I will keep the original packaging just because this is the one my grandma bought me. So this is very special to me and just one of the best palettes in my collection. I have the Subculture palette, which is the Modern Renaissance's sister palette. So this is actually one of the palettes that I'm wearing on my eyes today. I love the color scheme in here and I'm one of the few people who actually does really love the Subculture palette. The color scheme, first of all, is just so inspiring to me. It's very out of the box, very grungy. I wouldn't have ever thought that these colors would vibe together, but when you just look at it in this palette, it looks so right. So this is a very inspiring color palette for me, but the formula I actually do really enjoy. These aren't necessarily eyeshadows, they're pressed pigment formulas, so they are very extremely pigmented. There's a lot of color payoff and they're very powdery as well. You do have to kind of approach it differently than you would any other palette because they are a different formula. They can be a little bit harder to work with, and I will admit they can be a very difficult formula to blend if you're going at it for the first time. Using this palette though, I've kind of been able to adapt how I use the palette to what I want. So for me, just going at it differently, being a little bit more patient and working with it instead of against it, I've kind of been able to adapt myself to the formula, and I've really enjoyed the looks I've been able to create with this one. However, I do understand that this is not going to work for everybody, and I respect everyone's opinions on this one. I know that some people just absolutely hate this one, so I respect that. It's genuinely one of my favorite palettes, not just for the color scheme, but for the uniqueness and the aesthetic, and actually I do really like the formula as well. I have their newest palette, which is the Soft Glam palette. This one has instantly become a classic in my collection. I love this one so much. It's a staple for everyday looks, but I love that you also get some really nice deepened shades down here. So you can do something very dramatic. You've got some very foiled shimmers as well, so you can kind of take it in any direction you want to, very similarly to the Modern Renaissance. This one's just beautiful for me. I was kind of in that phase of doing very colorful, bold looks every single day, and this one kind of taught me to reappreciate my neutral colors in my collection. I will probably buy whatever Anastasia puts out in the future. I will definitely buy their next palette because I heard they're doing a colorful palette, which I'm very, very down for, very excited for, but this is one of my favorites in my collection, and whenever I just need a good neutral shade, I reach for this one first. I have the Master Palette by MARC. This one was limited edition. It was in collaboration with Mario de Diva Novik, who is Kim Kardashian's makeup artist. So this one is very, very true to his aesthetic. He just does very simple, kind of understated looks with very neutral colors, but he somehow makes it very glam, blown out, just beautiful. This is a classic neutral color scheme. It's mostly shimmers, which is actually what he works with very often. This is actually one of my favorite palettes to reach for when I don't actually want to do eyeshadow or when I don't want to put a lot of work into my eyeshadow. I'll just kind of throw one of these mattes here in the crease, pop like 2 or 3 of these shimmers on the lid, and it's just such an effortless look, but it always comes out great. So this is one of my favorites, actually from before Anastasia started machine pressing their palettes. They used to do hand pressing, and then with the Modern Renaissance onwards, they started doing machine pressing. So this one is a very different formula. It's still so soft and creamy. The Anastasia formula is a little bit powdery in general, but these ones are like soft and buttery and smooth. Both formulas are just amazing, and they're definitely my favorites in my collection, but it's a different formula, and I love this one so much. So I wish they would come out with just like one more hand pressed palette just so everyone could experience that formula again, but this is one of my favorites. I'm definitely keeping it. Next, I have my Juvia's Place palettes. I just did a full review of these palettes on my channel. I'm formatting my review of the Jaclyn Hill Vault the same that I formatted my review of these ones, so go check that out if you want to, but I really, really do love these palettes a lot. The first one I have is the Masquerade Mini. This one, I don't know why it's the Masquerade Mini because it's still pretty huge, but in here you get 16 shades. Half of it is warm tone neutrals, and then half of it is very colorful, like jewel toned colors. I really like this one a lot. I've created some very fun looks with this one. The formula in here is great. The formula in here is one of the best ones for the price point. The mattes are really blendable. They do show up a little bit lighter on the eyes than they look in the pans, but if you build them up, they're a really beautiful color. And then the shimmers in here are so good. One of my favorite shimmer formulas. They're very buttery, very smooth. They have a lot of dimethicone in them, so they're very soft to the touch and just like creamy, I guess. But just overall, a really great quality palette, and I think this one is $25. I have the Zulu palette, which is a rainbow palette. This one is a different formula from the rest of them. Mattes in here are a little bit dry. That is standard for most rainbow palettes. You do have to kind of go in with the pack and blend motion rather than like using a fluffy brush. So this one does kind of have a learning curve. You do have to go in it with it differently, but still, I really like the looks I've been able to create with this one. It's a great palette for this month because it is Pride Month this month, and it's just a gorgeous rainbow palette. This one I believe is $21, but you can get it on sale right now for $17.50. I have the Saharan 2 palette. This one I think is my favorite palette from Juvia's Place. I only have 3 matte shades in here. They're very dark and rich matte shades, so I do kind of pull in other palettes to use with this one, normally the Festival palette, but I don't mind having only 3 mattes because the shimmer formula, in my opinion, is one of the best formulas, and you get 6 of them in here. These 2 beautiful like icy blue shades are gorgeous on the eyes, and then the rest of the shimmers are just gorgeous as well. This is an awesome highlighter on my skin tone, and just overall I really love the quality of this one. And then finally the Festival palette, the most recent Juvia's palette that I own. This one has a lot more mattes in here. These are very buttery and smooth. One of my favorite shades in here is actually the shade Oro, which is a kind of mustard yellow shade. It is gorgeous in the crease, so I really like this one as well. I'm keeping all my Juvia's Place palettes. I'll do my BH Cosmetics palettes next. So I have 2 from them. This one is the Carly Bible Deluxe Edition one. This was limited edition. I believe you can still get it, but they just discontinued producing these ones. So in a couple weeks or so, they'll probably be gone. So definitely get this one while you can if you do like the color scheme. I love that the colors are very soft. You don't get a lot of depth in this palette, so the colors don't get very dark. You can only really create very soft, kind of soft glam looks. So this is really great for me because I do love creating more soft looks for classes or for work. This is very user-friendly. Each row is organized in terms of a look you can create, or you can just kind of mix everything together and use them. The mattes in here are very soft. They do take a bit of building. They're not the most pigmented shadows out there, but they still are very pretty. And I actually used a few of these shades up here to do a prom look on one of my friends. It was really beautiful. So shimmers in here are gorgeous as well. I do recommend using them with a flat shader brush, but they're really beautiful shimmer shades. You can actually use the highlighters on your eyes, but these are very blinding, bold highlighters. So while the eyeshadows are very soft and kind of subtle, the highlighters are very glowy. A lot of product in here, and you're getting a lot of amazing quality stuff for $23. You also get a mirror. So I really like this palette. I think probably one of my favorite influencer collaborations ever done, and Carly did a great job with this. I also have the Take Me Back to Brazil palette, which is a rainbow palette. Again, it is Pride Month, and I did, I think, 2 looks this month using this palette, so this is really beautiful. You get a lot of gorgeous rainbow shades in here. Obviously, these are very small pans. There is quite a bit of repetition. I think some of these shades in here, like these 2 pinks, and a few of the yellows in here, the greens, they all kind of just blend together and look very similar on the eyes, but it's okay because it is a $16 palette and you're getting 35 shades in here. These are so pigmented, especially for a $16 eyeshadow palette. I was very impressed with with the quality of these shadows, and they blend very easily. So this is one of my favorites. I'm definitely keeping this one. 2 palettes from Too Faced, so I'll just go through these ones. The first one is the Natural Love palette. I think this might be a permanent one in their collection. I'll have to check on that, but this one I would keep solely just for the packaging. I've talked about the packaging of this before. It's just one of my favorite palettes in my collection, just for looks sake. There's a cute little bunny on here. The flowers are beautiful. It's just a beautiful package. Huge mirror, so it's really great for filming tutorials if you ever do that. There are not a lot of mattes, so if you do predominantly matte looks like I do, that might bother you. But there are a lot of shimmers in here. This one got a lot of flack because people just really hated the formula, and I will say the formula is not worth the $60 price tag. So if I had to repurchase this, I would not do it again for $60. But I did get this one as a birthday gift, so I didn't really pay for this one. But I actually really like some of the shades in here. Love Bug is one of my favorites. Don't Settle. The shimmers are beautiful. It's not that hard to formulate a good shimmer shade. The shades I really do hate in here are the ones that are like matte shadows with micro glitter in them. Like, I don't understand why brands have to create shadows like that, because no one uses them. Like, does anyone use those matte shadows with like glitter flecks in them? I definitely don't. So it's not one I would repurchase, but since I do have it, I do reach for it pretty often, and I will keep this one. I have the Too Faced Just Peachy Mattes palette, and hold on to your horses, because I think this is probably the best eyeshadow that Too Faced has ever done in their entire career. I have decluttered my chocolate bar palettes. I've decluttered my Sweet Peach palette. all because I just think this blows them all out of the water. The formula in here is the best formula ever. It is all mattes, and I do love matte looks. These are just beautiful quality. They're very, very pigmented, very blendable, and just so soft and creamy. They apply very smoothly onto the eyes, and they're just so easy to work with. I wish that this was Too Faced's regular formula and that they would come out with every single palette in this formula. Unfortunately, they're not the most consistent in terms of the quality of their brand, but I do like the Too Faced aesthetic a lot, and if there's anything they kill it on, it is attention to detail. They really do. Amazing packaging with the peach clasps, just the entire thing. It does smell like peaches. I personally really enjoy that, and I'm keeping this one. I'll move on to my e.l.f. palettes. I have 3 of their Matte for Matte palettes. Unfortunately, I don't really like any of the other shadows that e.l.f. does. I have the Matte for Matte Summer Breeze, which is the Matte for Matte 2. This one is actually very similar in color scheme to the Too Faced Just Peachy Matte, so if you don't want to spend $45 on that one, or if you don't like the peach scent, this is a great option, and it's $10 for 10 shades. The e.l.f. Matte for Matte formula is one of my favorites. It's very pigmented, probably one of the best drugstore shadows I've ever tried, and I don't like a lot of drugstore shadows, I will admit. Colourpop is a great affordable option, but you can't really get that out of the drugstore. e.l.f. is really the only true drugstore brand where I actually do like their shadows. This is the Matte for Matte 3, or Holy Smokes. This one is more of a cool tone palette with 2 beautiful pops of blue. These are gorgeous. I have their newest Matte for Matte palette. This one is the Jewel Pop. I was so happy when they came out with a more colorful palette, and these are actually really great quality. Drugstore brands are not great at creating matte shadows, especially colorful matte shadows. For $10, this is one of the best palettes, and I really do like the color scheme. I would love to see higher end brands coming out with color schemes like this one. I'll move on to my 2 Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes. So I have 2 palettes from them. The first one would be the Natasha Denona eyeshadow palette 5 in palette number 04. This one is a pretty neutral palette with basically 4 super foiled shimmer shades in here and 1 matte. I hate the fact that these are so fragile. 2 of the shades in here did actually break on me. I managed to repress them and they still perform fine, but these are very fragile. This is the old formula from Natasha, so they did actually reformulate. That's what's in the Joya palette, the Apres palette, and the new Tropic palette, and this is the old formula. It's very foiled, extremely pigmented, and just crazy, crazy quality. I hate the packaging. It just feels so cheap and very drugstore-ish, but the quality of the actual shadows is great. Natasha did kind of listen to her customers and come out with better packaging for the holiday palettes, so this is the Joya palette. I love the gold sleek packaging. It's really, really pretty. This shade here did actually fall out of the pan on me. I actually caught it on video, so that really, really sucks. You definitely shouldn't have colors just flying out of the pans, especially if you're paying $50 for a palette, but this is a really nice color scheme. I love this gold shade here. The shimmers in here are still good. They're not quite as foiled as the ones in the old formula, but still very nice. I do actually like the mattes in the new formula better. I'm not sure if I would buy a big palette from her unless I really just loved every single color in the palette. Those are my palettes from her. I've got quite a few things to go through from Urban Decay, so I will just start off with the Naked Basics palette. This one is a very small, little compact 6-pan palette full of just neutral shades. I do really like Urban Decay's matte formula. I think it is their strong suit. And I really love this palette. Whenever I look at it, I want to keep it. But then I remember I've got the Soft Glam palette, I've got my Tartelette and Bloom palette, I've got so many other neutral colors like this in my collection, and I just do not need this one. It's just taking up space. So this would be better suited passed on to someone else. I will be decluttering this one. It'll be on my Poshmark. I don't need it, and I can't look at it anymore just because every time I look at it, I'm like, oh, I should keep that. It's gorgeous, but don't need it. I'll also be getting rid of my Naked 3. This one is not a hard decision for me at all, just because I don't love the formula of Naked's palettes. I'm just not a huge fan of the bigger Naked palettes, with the exception of Naked Heat. It's a predominantly shimmer palette. The shimmers, in my opinion, are just not great quality. They have so much fallout and they're very flaky. So I don't love the quality of the shimmers, which is pretty much what the entire palette is. And you get so few matte shades in here that it's just hard to create a full look, and I just don't love that. So I'm getting rid of this one. I just definitely don't think it's worth $54 or however much the Naked palettes are. This one I will give to my mother because she really does like the Naked palettes a lot. I said that I do actually like the Naked Heat, and I really do, because you have so many more matte shades in here. Like I said, I do really enjoy the Urban Decay matte formula. They added in a lot more matte shades, especially some like mid-tone transition shades. You have some beautiful like terracotta red shades in here. The matte formula is really great, very pigmented, smooth, buttery. And I actually do enjoy the shimmers in here. I think they did a different thing with their formula. These don't have a lot of fallout. I do enjoy this one a lot. I will be keeping this one, and that is my only Naked palette. I have 2 palettes from them with singles. So the first one would be this little rose palette. This one has purple roses all over it. I think it's really gorgeous. And this one has 2 shades from my Oz the Great and Powerful palette. This green duo split pan, this metallic gold and metallic black. And then I have 2 singles. One is like a slate gray and one is a cool toned kind of purple eggplant shimmer. Here's my Oz Great and Powerful palette. I really do, again, like the quality of Urban Decay's mattes. So I just kept all the good shades that I really like from the Oz palette. And then I put the ones I don't want into my single palette. As much as it pains me to get rid of this beautiful packaging, I think I'm going to get rid of this single palette with the singles I don't want. And I will keep my Oz palette because this is my first palette that I ever got. Like the first high-end eyeshadows that I ever owned. So this is just very special to me. I will keep the tin forever and ever, and I'm keeping the shadows in here. So I'm going to move on to my Huda Beauty-ish palettes. So the first one I actually have is from Huda Beauty. This is the Desert Dusk palette. I love the packaging, first of all. I think she does really beautiful packaging, especially for her new the Rose Gold Mu Master palette, which I won't be picking up, but I do think the packaging is stunning on that one. I always hold my breath whenever I open this one just because it's so fragile. This has broken on me 3 different times. The 3 shimmer shades, the 3 glitter shades in here, Twilight, Retrograde, and Cosmo, these break on me very often, which is annoying for a $65 palette, but I still think these are gorgeous shades. They do need a glitter glue to work at their best potential, but they're so beautiful on the eyes. The shimmers in here are actually one of my favorite formulas in the entire world. I think Huda has one of the best shimmer formulas, and they're just absolutely stunning. And then I really do like the mattes in here as well. They're very dry, like my sense of humor, but they are very blendable and pigmented as well. They hold their color extremely well, so they're very good for layering and creating very intricate, beautifully blended out, just awesome eye looks. So I really like this palette a lot, and I love the looks I've been able to come up with. I would probably repurchase this one if I lost it or went through it all, and I do really enjoy the quality of this one. So this is going to be staying. And then I have 2 other palettes that are not Huda Beauty, but they are kind of related to Huda Beauty, if that makes sense. So the first one would be the Beauty Creations Tease Me palette. This I actually used in a video on my channel, so I will link that in the cards, but this one is very similar in layout to Huda's palette. The shade down here called Lust is very similar to the textured shadows that Huda makes in her Rose Gold palette. So I actually really like this palette. It's very underrated to me. I don't see anybody talking about this ever on YouTube, but for $16, this is a great palette, an amazing kind of dupe of Huda's palettes without being a direct dupe. I love that they kind of wanted to do a similar thing in terms of the finishes and the quality of the shadows, but they kind of did a different thing with the color scheme. So I respect that they kind of duped it, but in a respectful way. I have the Bad Habit Aphrodite palette as well. This one is a direct dupe of the Huda Beauty Rose Gold palettes. This palette I actually did not love that much. The mattes in here are not my favorite formula at all. They're just very powdery, they blend into nothing. They're just not fun to work with. They kind of like, if you put them down, they look very pigmented, but then when you go to blend them out, they just are a mess. I do not like the mattes in here, but the shimmers are the reason that I kept this palette. These are so incredibly ridiculously foiled. I'm not going to do swatches just because I don't want to get dirty, and I don't want to do swatches in this video. That would just make it so long. If you want to see swatches and a review of this palette, I will link the video that I did above. But the shimmers in here are the reason I keep this one. They're very, very foiled, just amazing quality. So keeping this one, I think this was $12, so I don't feel that bad about keeping it for only half the palette. Also from Bad Habit Beauty, I do have 2 more palettes that are also dupe palettes. This one is the Supernova palette. This one is a dupe of the Natasha Denona Lila palette. It's a purple themed palette. Most of these are shimmers. These are actually really great quality. I do think Natasha's formula is better, clearly, because you're not going to be able to dupe an $129 formula with an $18 or $16 palette. But in terms of the color scheme, I think they did a great job of replicating that kind of same aesthetic. The shimmers are beautiful. You do need to use a primer with them because they might crease a little bit, but they do have that beautiful color payoff, and they're just really, really pretty to work with. So I like this one a lot. I will keep that one. I also have the Dreamstate palette, and this one is a dupe of the Fenty Beauty Galaxy palette. So these are all pressed glitters. And I wasn't going to buy the Fenty Galaxy palette just because I didn't want to spend that much money on a pressed glitter palette, but $16 I will spend my money on a pressed glitter palette. So these are beautiful, and I'm very happy to say I've been using them very often. These I reach for whenever I want a shade that's just going to kind of bring that extra half an inch to a look that'll make it go over the top. So if I feel like a look is missing something, sometimes I'll just take one of these shimmer shades, pat it on top of the shimmer that I already have in a similar color, and it just brings it to the next level. So I really enjoy this palette a lot, and for $16, it's great quality. I have 2 palettes from Tarte. So the Tartelette and Bloom palette is one of my favorites. This is a beautiful neutral palette, and kind of unlike the Soft Glam, this one is more geared towards the true neutral shades. It's not too warm or too cool. It's just kind of right in the middle. So the packaging is beautiful. Obviously, you get gold detailing, like a nice acrylic floral front. Very sturdy packaging, and I take this traveling with me very often. I feel like this would be a very hard palette to break though, just because these are so like hardly pressed. They're very dense in the pans, whereas Anastasia is very soft, so those break very easily. The formula of these is a bit dry, but they build on themselves very well. They're very blendable, and they have a great amount of pigment to them. So these are nice for creating a very soft, neutral look. The shimmers in here are beautiful formula as well, so I do actually really enjoy this one. I think it's $45, and it's one of my favorite neutral palettes. I will be getting rid of the Tartelette Tease palette just because it is the same formula as the Tartelette in Bloom palette, and if you have the Tartelette in Bloom, you do not need this one. It's basically the same colors in there, but in a smaller packaging, so as nice as this would be for travel, I just take this traveling with me. It's not that much bigger, so getting rid of this one. I've got some Wet n Wild shadows that I actually did depot. I hate the Wet n Wild palette packaging. So this is the Comfort Zone palette. I actually put it into an e.l.f. powder compact that I depotted. 6 pans from Wet n Wild will fit perfectly into the big pan from the e.l.f. powder compact. But these are the shades from the Comfort Zone palette, and you know what? I didn't think I was going to do this, but I think I'm going to get rid of this one just because I haven't reached for this one since I depotted it. I thought if I got it out of the packaging that I hate, I would actually use it more often, but all I do is actually just look at this one and swatch it. The reason I was keeping it is this duochrome kind of green blue-brown pigment down here. Very similar to the Makeup Geek blue-brown pigment or the MAC blue-brown pigment, but I have this shade in many different palettes, so I don't need the Comfort Zone palette. I will get rid of that one. I also have in my Colourpop palette the depotted Petal Pusher shades. This palette is no longer available. It was a purple-themed palette. You know what? I also don't need this one. Wet n Wild's formula, as it's good, but I wouldn't pay more than $6 for it, if that makes sense. So I think I'm gonna get rid of these 2 palettes. I'll probably bundle them together in a Poshmark bundle. They're good quality and they perform well, but I prefer more foiled shimmers, and I prefer like super bright mattes, and those are just more natural and more understated, so not really my style. I'm gonna be getting rid of those ones, and I feel a lot better about that. Now we're gonna be moving into the singletons, which means I don't have more than 1 palette from each of these brands. So Sugar Pill, I have my Sugar Pill Pro palette. I wish I had more than 1 palette from Sugar Pill, but I only have this palette, and I'm so down to buy more Sugar Pill shadows because these are the best quality colorful shadows I've ever tried. This palette was a huge investment for me. Each of these pans is $10, so the entire palette was $120, which is stupid, but these are beautiful. If you do colorful eyeshadow looks, I think investing in a Sugar Pill palette would be an amazing option for you because these are so ridiculously pigmented. Not super powdery either, so you only use a very small amount to get an insane amount of pigment. They swatch terribly, but they just perform so beautifully. If picking out an entire palette is not an option for you and you just want to get a couple singles to try out the formula, I would say the best singles that Sugar Pill sells, in my opinion, would be Buttercup Kick Here, which is the yellow shade. This is the best matte yellow I've ever tried in my entire life. And then Taco, which is the best matte white I've ever tried in my entire life. These are just the best ones. Sugar Pill is one of my favorites. This is probably in my top 10 favorite eyeshadow palettes, and I'm keeping this one, obviously. I have 1 palette from Colored Rain. This is the Queen of Hearts palette. This is a warm tone lover's dream, and for a while this was very hard to get your hands on. They actually had this limited edition, and then they discontinued it. So for I want to say 6 months or so, it was gone completely, and everyone was selling it on eBay for $200. Colored Rain came out with it again, and they announced that it was going to be permanent. So very happy that they made this permanent because it is one of the best palettes out there on the market. I think the matte formula in here is one of the best I've ever tried. These are so ridiculously pigmented and they blend out so easily. Colored Rain is a black-owned brand, so they do not mess around with pigment. These are shadows that will work on every skin tone, and they never look ashy. They just blend so easily. The color impact is always great. I also really like the shimmers in here. These are just my style. I prefer to have very foiled, very glittery shimmers, and these are just perfect for me. I do wish that the outer sleeve, I love the packaging of this. I do wish that the packaging of the actual palette was the same, but you know what? To each their own. I think it's a really beautiful palette, and I would really love to try more from Colored Rain. They have a bunch of mini palettes on their website that are $36 each, which is a little bit expensive for me, but they have 6-pan mini palettes to try out their formulas. I would really love to try some of those because the color schemes on those are beautiful. I have 1 palette from JOUER. This is the Skinny Dip Ultra Foil Shimmer Shadows palette, and this is the only thing I own from JOUER. I was not planning on picking anything up from this line. The Skinny Dip line released, I think, last spring, I want to say. I wasn't planning on picking this up, and then Nikki Tutorials swatched this palette on her Snapchat story. I think I still have a screenshot of the swatches from this palette saved on my phone because I immediately screenshotted her story. I was like, no, I need that. This is so beautiful. Whenever I'm doing a look and I need a good shimmer lid shade, I will usually reach for whatever's in the palette that I'm using. I don't ever really think to reach into a different palette. So I think I'm going to keep this actually on top of my vanity so I remember to reach for it because these colors in here are beautiful. I have used this very often. I do really love the quality of these shadows. These are probably this is a really great introduction to JOUER for me, and it definitely makes me want to try more from them. I also have one palette from Marc Jacobs. This is the EYECONIC palette in SCANDALLEST. These released last summer. I think I've had this one for about a year now. This is a very condensed version of the color story from the Modern Renaissance, in my opinion. So you have all those warm tone neutral shades, and you have a beautiful pop of berry. There are 7 shades in here, whereas Modern Renaissance has 14, and Modern Renaissance is actually cheaper. It's $42, whereas this one is $50, which is a staggering price difference, but I do think the formula of this one is top notch. Marc Jacobs' formula is so rich in color payoff. These are extremely pigmented, and I'm sure you've heard me say pigmented like 20 times in this video tops, but these are very, very pigmented, and for that reason, you only need to use a very small amount to get a ton of color payoff. And then the shimmers are beautiful as well. They're very, very easy to work with. And sometimes, you know, I really like reaching for something with a bit of a smaller color story. These are very sleek and just easy to use. You just automatically know what you're going to do with this palette when you see it, and it looks beautiful out on the vanity. Obviously the packaging is insane, so if you are wanting to kind of treat yourself to a nice luxurious experience, a beautiful product, these are great, and not as expensive as Pat McGrath, so really like that. I have one palette from Deck of Scarlet. This is from their May-June line. This is the Deck of Scarlet edition number 8. And it was in collaboration with Kim Tai, who is one of my favorite influencers here on YouTube. But she created a very romantic themed palette. This one says Dream on the front, and in here you get 3 eyeshadow shades, you get 2 face shades, and then you get 2 lip shades. So I'll just go over the face and eyeshadows. In here you get a very bright pink blush. This is a little bit too bright for me, but if I use a very small amount of it, and if I use a very light hand, I can make it work. The highlighter in here is called Fairy Dust. This is a beautiful highlighter. It's very, very pigmented and very glowy, just a gorgeous formula. Really, really enjoy the eyeshadows in here. I wasn't really expecting the most amazing formula ever, but they're very, very good quality. I like the shimmer shade in here a lot. It's like a duochrome kind of peachy pink gold shade. It's so gorgeous, but these are really nice eyeshadows. I really enjoy the fact that the lip products are in a different area so that the powders won't get in there, and these are really great quality as well. I do actually enjoy potted lipsticks and lip products like this, so I know some people really, really hate potted lip products that you have to use with a lip brush, but I don't mind them. I think they're really, really nice quality. I've already seen what the July-August palette looks like. Spoiler alert, it's beautiful, so really enjoy this one a lot. I have my Becca Apres Ski Glow palette. So this is technically an eyeshadow palette, but I actually use it as a face palette. So basically they're shimmering skin perfectors, which is their highlighters, but in eyeshadow forms. It's a sample basically all of their most famous colors. So you have pearl in the middle, opal, topaz, rose quartz, moonstone, toasted marshmallow, like that. It's that same formula of the shimmering skin perfectors, but in eyeshadow form, so you can use them on your eyes. They're beautiful on the lids, but I really like using them on the face as well, so I will actually put this up with my face palettes instead of with my eye palettes, but I will be keeping this. I have a palette from Kylie Cosmetics. This is the purple palette, so Kylie, I think, did a really, really unique thing with this palette. I don't know if she developed this herself, I kind of doubt it, but this is a beautiful color scheme. I love the fact that she came out with a purple palette at the same time that everyone was doing purple palettes, but instead of using like warm tone neutrals and then adding like 2 purples in there, like the Huda Beauty Desert Dusk, she really committed to the purple color scheme, and this is a true purple palette in my opinion. Really love this lavender shade in here. This is one of my favorite shades in my collection. It's a bit chalky, and that sounds very off-putting, but I find that the chalkiness kind of plays into the fact that it is a lavender shade, so it does look so while it is a chalky texture, it just looks truly pigmented in lavender on the skin and on the eyes. So I did actually use this in a galaxy look that I will flash on screen, but I've used the entire palette on my eyes many times, and this actually makes me want to try a lot more from Kylie. I think it's a really beautiful formula. It's held up very well in my collection, so I enjoy this a lot. I have one palette from the Balm. This is called the Balm Appetit palette, so I will be getting rid of this one definitely. The packaging is really cute, first of all. I do really like the aesthetic that the Balm has with their packaging. They do really nice vintagey things, and this was so cute. I saw that it said eat your heart out, and I was just really sucked into this one. I think I spent like $36 on it, but the formula is just not up to par with what I'd expect from a $36 palette. The positive note in here are the shimmers. They're very pretty. They just perform like any standard shimmer would, and they're just nice on the eyes, but the mattes in here just do not show up on me at all. They're very not pigmented, I guess, and as cute as the packaging is, that's just not enough for me to keep the palette. So I will be getting rid of this one. I think I'll sell this heavily discounted on my Poshmark because I don't want this in my collection anymore. The VISEART Petite Pro palette. This one is the only thing I own from VISEART at the moment. I did have a couple of their Theory palettes, which I ended up decluttering. I don't know. I don't understand the hype behind VISEART. I get that they're formulated for pros, but I don't ever see pros on Instagram using them. I follow a lot of makeup accounts. I see so many people do amazing eye looks. Never once have I gone into the description box and seen VISEART as their eyeshadows. So they're good quality. They're not bad eyeshadows by any means, and this is a good little way to sample them, but they're so expensive, and I just don't see what makes them special for that price. I don't know. I will keep this one because I do like having just something to reference in my collection, and I do use these. It's a really nice compact little travel palette. It's so small, but I don't think I would buy anything from VISEART ever again just because it's so expensive, and I don't find anything so special that will justify the price of these palettes. So I'm going to keep this one, but I'm probably not buying from VISEART anytime soon. I have a Kat Von D Shade and Light Eye Quad in the shade Plum. I mentioned this in my purple palettes video. It's just like a couple purple shades, and I'm getting rid of this one because I don't want Kat Von D in my collection. Finally, I have a little trio from Shiseido, which I was keeping because I was on the hunt for purple palettes. I kept this one in my last declutter just because I wanted some really good purple shadows to keep in my collection until I found some other alternatives. And now that I have so many purple eyeshadows, I will leave the video that I did with all my purple palettes in the cards above. But now that I have some other amazing alternatives for great purple shadows, I can get rid of this one now. This is a beautiful quality eyeshadow palette. I think it's a really beautiful color scheme, but I don't want to keep this one in my collection just because I have better options from not Shiseido. Finally, I'll finish off this video with my little single palette. I'm not going to go through every single shadow in here, but this is basically all my singles. I think I'm going to go through here, declutter some of the singles that I don't use anymore, sell them in a bundle on my Poshmark, but I will keep most of these ones. This is my little purple area that's very special to me. I have a bunch of singles in here. They're all from either Colourpop, Anastasia, or Morphe. The palette itself is from AOA Studio, which would be the Shop Miss A brand. I'm doing a haul from them very soon, so stay tuned for that. With that, that concludes my eyeshadow palette collection and declutter video, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel. Make sure you're following me on Instagram for when my makeup looks like this one. Let me know in the comments below what is your favorite palette that I mentioned in this video, and what is your favorite palette in your collection. I would really love to try out some of your recommendations. You guys always steer me in great directions in terms of what you recommend to me. If you made it to the very end of this very long video, congratulations. Thank you so much for watching my channel. I love you.